Brought to you by Penguin.
A Good Man by Ani Katz. Read for you by Deakins. For my grandparents, Murray, a mensch, and Lillian, a lover of opera. The Billy Club arrived with the first shipment of Christmas presents that year, one package among several stacked on the front porch. The snow had started in the late afternoon, and by the time I got home from work, the lawn was dusted with powder. The girls were still out. Ballet, maybe, or a violin lesson. In the hush of the early dark, I knelt and gathered the gifts in my arms, then carried them into our house. The club had made the long journey coastward from the home of an amateur craftsman in War Eagle, Arkansas, who'd advertised the club on eBay as an absolutely terrific tire and fish thumper. Carved from Ozark red cedar, the club was about the size of a t-ball bat, and it had a nice old-fashioned look to it, like something you'd hang in your study instead of your garage. Wrapped around the rich wood barrel, held in place by a rubber band, there was a sheet of paper, a letter from the seller, which I lost almost immediately. The missive must have been shuffled in with the old-school flyers and grocery lists and holiday cards, tossed out with the rest of the paper ephemera that was always blanketing the kitchen counter. But I remember most of what the letter said. It was a testimony of faith, one man's deliverance from death through the power of prayer. Stricken by pancreatic cancer, the seller had given up on life, but one day his wife had dragged him to church, long-sleeved in the August heat, trying to hide the yellowing of his skin, and there in the pew he had a revelation. He saw his entire life pass before his eyes, and that's when he knew that he was being protected by a power greater than himself. He began to weep, and when he got into his car to go home, he looked down, and the yellow in his skin had disappeared. A few days later, his doctor told him his tumor was gone. The seller signed off by calling me brother. He said my name was a blessing, that Thomas the Apostle had doubted the resurrection, but found his faith when he touched Christ's wounded body, a miracle. I have seen the Caravaggio painting of the subject. Old doubting Thomas, his forehead creased with awe, as Christ grasps his wrist and guides his hand to his bloodless breast, one calloused finger probing the dark gap where the spear went in. The prophet from War Eagle said that I should not doubt, that mercy was real, and my own miracle would come soon. I remember reading the letter at the kitchen island, my dog nosing at my ankles, asking for his dinner. I had switched on Met Opera radio, as I always did the moment I got home, and while I bore witness to this stranger's supposed healing and salvation and his promise of my own, I was treated to the end of the first act of Eugene Onegin. It was the splendid 1992 Beechcroft recording. Forostovsky is impeccable in the title role. I folded the letter away as my wife and daughter bustled in through the side door, the sweet jangle of their chatter and the dog's exuberant yelps drowning out Onegin's warnings to Tatiana about self-control and inexperience, my dear girls' voices mingling with the chorus of the maids singing blithely in the garden, cold air exhaling off their bodies as they greeted me, the dog hurling himself at our shins. Swimming. It had been swimming. I remember my daughter's wet hair, her dark curls still stringy and sodden against her neck and collar, the chlorine on her skin when she kissed me. Earlier that year, my agency had done a television spot for a cancer drug that supposedly added 6 months or more to the lifespans of truly hopeless cases. The ad opens with a scene of a Mr. Rogers type, struggling to rouse himself from an easy chair, looking fretfully at the stoic face of the clock on the wall. Then it cuts to a woman escorting her elderly mother down a hall, their faces grim. That scene gives way to a handsome man lying in bed, too tired.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?